Can you hear me? Okay, fantastic. I know it's pretty early in the morning. I know some of you maybe had, some, how can I say it, good night. So after all the celebrations downtown, it was a very festive atmosphere yesterday downtown. I had the chance to walk a little bit. Sonia, thank you very much for the introduction. What it's not on my bio data is that we have been planning this with the APPI people for more than 5 years now in various conferences all over the world. We were always chatting, they were coming to my talk, so eventually I'm very, very happy to be here. It's not my first time in Portugal, but it's my first time as an APPI plenary speaker. So, positive education, what are you going to listen here today? First of all, I know that only by listening to the word positive, this creates some kind of mixed feelings. And I would dare say some misconceptions as well. Because it's a word that has been stretched into various directions and it has been given various meanings. Sometimes there's a lot of misunderstandings. There is a positive reaction when you listen to this word in the beginning, but sometimes because it has been so widely used and in so many different contexts, I need, somehow to put this into perspective. So the first thing is that I will try to define what positivity is. The second thing is that I want you to keep at the back of your mind, that positivity, positive psychology, or positive education is not simply a mindset. It's not something to press the button feeling or, change of mood. It's a trained skill. And this leads me to the third thing that I would like to share with you today. This is all science. It's scientific. It's not simply rumors. It's not simply publications. It's not simply people talking about it or find it, in cheap narratives or even printable materials. It's something that science has been dealing with for the last 20, 25 years. Whatever you're going to see on the screen is 100% being scientifically proved or even researched. So I want you to have this perspective and keep a clear mind about what you're going to listen here today, because we will try to put things in a way in order. But before we start, this talk has a little bit of interaction. There are going to be some questions, maybe rhetorical questions to you. And I will try to connect it with things that happened to me that actually led me towards this idea of positive psychology and positive education that, by the way, I've been researching and talking to teachers for the last 5 years. So does anybody know what this phrase means on screen? Captatio benevolentiae. Any ideas? Okay, benevolence. First of all, can we recognize the language? It's Latin. I have a very short story about this phrase. Travel with your mind something like 40 years ago, provincial Greece. I was in the 3rd grade of high school, and there was a chemistry teacher. There was chaos in the classroom. There was a lot of noise. We were very naughty back then, that he would all the time say, guys, please silence. We need to have captatio benevolentiae. We need to have captatio benevolentiae. It was very intellectual for our level back then. We never looked it up. I never actually knew what this phrase meant back then. But the very same phrase, this is somehow the games of life, was repeated at one of my positive psychology courses by a university professor of mine as the most important first step that you need to take every time you are about to begin something. Actually, this is a term that was used by Cicero. It was one of the basic fundamentals, principles of oratory. And he said that if you want something to start well, if you want to have a good talk, a good speech, you need to capture the goodwill of the audience. And I want you to keep this as a principle in life. When you have a good start, when something starts in a positive way, then most probably the rest of the things will run smoothly. It's important to start smoothly. It's important to start with a positive note. And this is what I'm planning to do now with my second slide. But I want to make a small deal with you, even though it's a little bit early in the morning, but maybe you are in the mood for deals. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to give you 90% of the story now, and the end of the story at the end of this plenary. Do we have a deal? Are we okay with that? All right, okay. Let's travel back to India when Mahatma Gandhi was teaching all these huge crowds, and there would be these long queues of people waiting to talk and seek advice from the master. Among them, there was a lady who was living in a very remote village in India. One day, she caught the train. She traveled for 24 hours. She stood in the queue for another 5 or 6 hours to meet the master. And when she got in front of the teacher, he asked him this particular question or statement. He gave him this statement: "My son is eating too much sugar. Please advise him." She was with her son, by the way, who was an overweight guy like me. So the master looks at the mother, looks at the son, and very calmly says, "Go back to your village and come back in 3 weeks' time." The mother had no other chance. She catches the train again, 24 hours, waits in the village for another 3 weeks, catches the train again, another 24 hours, waits in the queue again for 5, 6 hours, and there she is after 3 weeks in front of the master. "Do you remember me?" she said in a pretty suspicious way. "Of course I do," said the master. "You are the woman with the overweight child. So, what advice have you got for my son?" And Gandhi very calmly looks at the son, looks at the mother, and says to the son, "Stop eating sugar." The mother was fuming. She was so enraged, but at the same time, she had all this respect for the master. She couldn't actually show it. But she took a very big breath and said, "Master, with all due respect, I traveled 4 times for 24 hours to come in this queue, wait for you for another 5 or 6 hours twice. I had to wait for 3 weeks so I can come here and you tell him to stop eating sugar." I could have told him that. And the master, very calm, very serene, looks at the mother, looks at the son, and says, "Remember, we made a deal, okay?" So, the end of the story, at the end of the talk, just remind me because sometimes I forget, okay? So, and let's start now with a little bit of positive education since we had a very good start. And the first thing that I would like to clarify, we talked a lot about misconceptions. And here we are not talking only about positive psychology. We are talking about positive education. So if you think about becoming a more positive teacher, or if you are thinking seriously of applying after this talk, hopefully, positive education techniques, you don't have to have studied positive psychology. Obviously, they are related. Positive education has to do with the applications of positive psychology in the classes, but you don't have to be a psychologist. So I don't want this to be like a hindering factor from you to move on and learn more about it. Positive education was made so to be applied by teachers, like you and me. Yes, there are a lot of studies and theories, but it's for us. That's one of the basic things I wanted to share. A little bit of history so you can get the context. I feel blessed because all these 5 years I had the chance to meet both these wonderful people. Martin Seligman was the father of positive psychology. He was the man that back in 1999, he was the president of the American Psychology Association. And I think he had the bravery to come out and said, "Guys, psychology until now, it's half-baked, literally half-baked." Meaning, in other words, that 99.9% of the people who would go to a psychologist would go in order to solve a problem, would go for a negative reason. Actually, he has a theory, he calls it the -10, and he says that even until now, today, a psychologist can get you from -10 when you have a problem to 0. In other words, a psychologist cannot generate happiness, cannot make you or train you feel happier. He simply or she simply amends the problem. And he wanted to give a more positive perspective to this whole concept of psychology. And I think he did it. And then this lady came in, Barbara Fredrickson. I think she's the mother of positive psychology, that she devoted her whole life in the lab to prove something that I think you already know, but maybe now it's time to realize that it's 100% true. And it's science as well that proves that. Number one, the Broaden theory. Broaden theory means that when you feel positive, you expand your horizons. You have different perspectives. Your mind opens up. And try to realize it in your everyday life. It's exactly what is happening. When you are positive, you are more open to new things. You're not closed, defensive, negative. But the most important thing is the Bill theory. The Bill theory means that when there is a lot of positivity in the room, when you feel positive, this becomes a contagious thing. Positive feelings generate more positive feelings. And actually, she even calls it the spiraling theory. They go up, 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 up. So I think from that perspective, we only have to benefit from this approach. Positivity benefits us, and consequently, this may help us benefit with the interaction with the others. I think these two are very, very important ideas. But Seligman, so far we've been talking about positive psychology, not education. Seligman was a little bit itchy about this idea. He knew that this cannot be something that has to be remained within the strict walls of the academy. He knew that he had the research in his hand. He knew that he studied a lot. There were so many different scientists dealing with this thing, but he knew that that was the science for the people. That was the science for humanity. So he needed to do something to get it out there. And there were two channels. The first one was family, but it's impossible a little bit, I think, to train every single father or mother on this earth to be more positive. Sometimes it's even impossible. But he thought also about education and schools. Schools can be a channel that this thing can be diffused, conveyed, and shared with the rest of the people. And he was very lucky, because this school in Australia, the Geelong Grammar School, even before Seligman came out with his theory, they were practicing positive education techniques in that school. So they gave him a call and they told him, come here with your family. That was back in 2006, and try to see in practice whether this works. If we are more positive, can we be better students? If we are more positive, can we become better people later on? All the research, all the experiments, all the skills, all the conclusions can be found on that book. Maybe it was the first serious practical attempt on positive education. We're talking about over 470 pages there. If you want, it's a very good starter if you want to find out more about positive education, and that's where we saw that this can actually work at the school context. And as I said in the introduction, I will attempt to give a definition, because on that screen you can see so many other different words that has been used a lot lately. But if I am to define positive education, I would say that it's the perfect blend of academic learning. We don't forget about that. We will still teach the present simple and the present continuous. We will still be teachers of English, and of course, well-being. Maybe it's preparing students with life skills such as grit, optimism, resilience, growth, mindset, engagement, and mindfulness, amongst others. And funny that I say this, but Seligman started all this about positive education with a huge survey among parents. And you might be surprised, but the majority of the parents were expecting these skills instead of high grades to be cultivated into a school context. So, in other words, maybe we have placed so much emphasis on academic performance, but what about character? What about human skills? What about how you can overcome an obstacle or a problem in your life? And if this is not to come or be taught through education, then what is the right channel to do it so? And maybe these are very serious questions to consider why positive education should be adopted. And of course, it's based on well-being and happiness, positive psychology. By the way, I'm also a founding member of the International Positive Education Network. We do a lot of interventions at schools, and all this data comes straight from Mr. Seligman's team, so they're very, very accurate. And of course, if you want to see the diagram, practically what I'm talking here is that learning and well-being, they are two different, maybe isolated notions, skills, or frameworks. If you see them alone, they are in a vacuum. And maybe this is what we are doing. We focus a lot on academics, pedagogy, accomplishment, excellence. We know that well-being is all about resilience, meaning, connection, more positive feelings, the PERMA model. I'm going to talk more about this. But what unites them maybe does not exist until maybe today or recently, where positive education can actually merge these together. Combining these domains in schools is the definition of positive education. Each gives strength to the other, both together equip students for success in life with well-being. So merging without disturbing the individual identity of these two notions or frameworks, if you want to call them. And I know that you had Sarah Mercer last year here as a plenary. We're very proud because, by the way, to thank the sponsor of Express Publishing as well for this talk. I am not sure whether you can find this book at the stand. It's an anthology of different academic articles supervised by Daniel Seri and Sofia Mavridi. But there is a very interesting article by Mrs. Mercer in that book that actually praises us. She's an expert on well-being. I know that you know this. She writes a lot about compassion and positive feelings in the classroom and well-being as well. And she clearly names, that's why I put the quotation up there, that the best classes that well-being can be implemented are English language classes. Why? Because we have all these resources. You have all these materials. You have all this variety of tasks that you can do. And if you think this in comparison with a physics or a math teacher, we have this plethora of options that we can activate anytime. And I would totally agree with her. By the way, and I had the chance to talk this with Mr. Seligman. It was an unofficial chat, but there are a lot of papers. If you think about implementing this, the best way is not have a separate subject. The best way is to integrate it in your lesson, and that's what Mr. Seligman told me. Because when you have a separate subject, this may subconsciously create some pressure on the students, or see it just like another subject that they need to learn or perform. But if it's integrated, it somehow passes through their notion and concept and perception in an easier way. Okay, so far so good. Maybe you think that, okay, that was a good intro and maybe you want to do it. The first question maybe that comes to your mind is, George, how do I do it? And as I said, it's not simply about studying or researching or investigating. This is mostly about you. So I would say that if you think about starting, start with yourselves. And I have 3 preconditions that I think are very, very important, not only if you decide to go through positive education, but regarding anything that you may decide in your life. The first thing is self-reflection. I was really surprised because I was invited twice by TESOL Turkey to repeat the same talk. The talk was nothing scientific, was 100% experiential, and had the title, A Walk That Changed My Life. And it was only after COVID, when I realized when I stayed home, that I wasn't spending a lot of time thinking about what I really want and how to do it. And what gave me this opportunity was a walk around my house during the harsh COVID times of 60 minutes. I was walking, I was thinking, I was self-reflecting. Something really, really important that even a guy from my country said in 3 words: know thyself. In order for this to happen, you need to spend some time with yourselves thinking. I have other friends that do this watching Netflix. I have other friends that do this while they're reading a book. I have other friends that do this simply by keeping a journal, which is a very, very typical way to do it. Just spend some time with yourself and think, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do the other thing? It's a very simple diagram from another university professional of mine, which doesn't say something, sophisticated, but it's very clear-cut. We receive all the information from various sources, we reflect on them, and then we keep some of these thoughts and go deeper. We introspect. It's at that particular point where you decide, I want this, I don't want this. It's very simple. As Sonia was reading my bio data, I don't want to say this all the time, but it's something that I enjoy, and it's something that I don't consider it like an achievement. Maybe at a certain time it will stop, but I have traveled to over 107 countries only for educational purposes. So I have a very good experience of classes from Chile up to Russia, and from the United States up to Thailand. Okay. So every time I was entering on that plane, and possibly like you, I think you can see this sign: put on your own oxygen mask before helping those around you. And I was seeing this phrase again and again and again, and there was something missing there. There was something missing there. Semantically, I think it's very clear, okay, but my problem is that this particular phrase does not show you how imperative it is to complete the first action before the other. This phrase does not tell you that if the adult won't put first the mask on, something bad will happen to the child or to the person who seeks help next to him. There is no imperative mood in this phrase, okay? It sounds like a simple suggestion. However, I think it's very important, and this leads me to the second precondition. In psychology, it's called self-intervention. When I find something that I like, first try to apply it on yourself. You are the best testers. You are the best experimenters of this idea. I have many friends who say, I want to help him, I want to help her. First, help yourself. Is this everything okay? And then you go to help others. And this is happening by applying to yourself what you want to do and see if it actually works. And the third precondition, which I think it's again something very, in positive psychology, I think it's also called authenticity. Yes, it's called take action, but there is another word here that I really love from another professor of mine, embodiment. In other words, you cannot be a positive educator and not be in a good mood. You cannot be a positive educator talking down to students. You cannot be a positive educator without being kind, polite, having a good mood, trying to inspire this to people. And this is why I always call that positivity, it's a trained skill, as I told you in the beginning. It's something that you live. It's not a spectator sport. It's a player sport. You need to go down and play, not simply study. And it's again about knowledge, practice, and becoming the embodiment of what you teach. Justin Robinson was the first director of studies at the Geelong Grammar School. He's a very sophisticated man. And this is one of his phrases stuck on my mind: positive education is not taught, it's caught. So it's a lot about your mindset and what you actually do, how you embodied it in a way. As Simon Sinek says, always find your why. So maybe your next question on your mind, I'm trying to read your mind, is, why should I do this? Even though I want to do it, why should I do it? The data is very compelling and very recent, and comes again from the archives of IPEN after serious recent research. I'm going to randomly read some phrases. 1 in 6 children aged 6 to 16 experience a mental health issue in the UK. 1 in 5, 12, 17 years old reported they seriously considered suicide in the US. We're talking about a downward spiral. This refers to China, UK, US, and Europe. 1 in 3, 12 to 17 years old had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in the US. More that referred to Australia. 1 in 13, 12, 17 years old seriously considered suicide. Again, 1 in 4 young Australians experience depression. I'm not surprised that one of the most popular series on Netflix lately was Adolescence, which is more or less about exactly this issue. We were a little bit shocked about the topic. I'm not going to judge the series. I haven't watched it. I'm just, reading all the narrative behind. But if you want more statistics, this is not a very new research, but I'm 100% sure that if you go to the site and check for the American College Health Association, this is from 2018, nothing much has changed. In this survey, we have all the big American universities included. Stanford, Columbia, everything. And here you can see the academic impact that negative feelings have on students that would kill to be in these universities. We're talking about high sophisticated institutions. And you think that if someone is at Stanford, this is like completing the dream of a life. He should or she should be happy. However, as I can see here, sleep difficulties 20.2, stress 31.9, anxiety 25.9, depression 16.9. You are at Stanford and you are depressed. And after, I was in a way overwhelmed by all this data, all you have to do is, and this is a challenge for you, just go on Google after we finish the session and type negative feelings papers. You will be inundated, your inbox, your screen will be inundated by data that confirm exactly the same thing, that there is a lot of negativity and negative feelings in our schools today. And as Malcolm Gladwell says, I don't need the data. If we chat with each one of you, I'm sure you have a case or maybe cases that this moody, sad, or even negative mindset is persistent. People don't want to go to school. Students don't want to come to school because they see it as a source of pressure or negativity. So we need to fix that. Moving to the second reason, I have a very short question for you. Which are the 2 days in the whole world that are days off for everyone, and you are not allowed to do anything at all? I'm going to give you some seconds before I... Any ideas? No, Friday, Saturday, no. Friday you were here, you had a full day. Saturday, again, it's a full day today. Not Christmas, not Easter, not any other kind of celebration, not national holiday. Thank you. Thank you for the teaser. Exactly. There are 2 days in the year that we cannot do anything. Yesterday and tomorrow. And the truth is that the past is gone, the future is not here yet, but the present is a gift. I know that this sounds like a cheap pulp psychology magazine, but I can tell you that this is the first thing that you train yourself to do within a positive psychology context or even class. And I'm really happy when I saw this poster, and I need to congratulate APPI because that's the first SIG, the mindfulness SIG that I saw, training people and teachers to do exactly the same. Be present. We cannot change the past. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We need to train ourselves to focus on what we have right now. And here are just some suggestions of activities that you can do with your students. Tell them just to forget about grades or the goals, because if they are not focused on what they do, then maybe the results are not going to be the anticipated one. So focus on what you do now, and you're going to reap the rewards later. We have totally forgotten this activity, not only in the classes, but in our lives. Simply to close our eyes, or without closing our eyes, and think, how can we have a good time with what we have? How can we actually appreciate what we have and move on? It's called savoring. And it's like attributing something positive to what you have right now. Not what would you like to have or what you missed, but what you have right now. And of course, this is something we're going to talk a lot. Having a great time now, being in a good mood, can robust you with resilience when adversity is going to come. Because adversity is going to come, my friends. Either we want it or not. Sometimes it knocks on our doors in a very tragic form, which we always wish not to happen, but obstacles, problems, and bad moments are always there. But my point is that these three very basic activities, practically what do? They urge you in a way to shift into another level of mindfulness. For me, all this, it's epitomized in one phrase: just stop and think for a moment. Because when you stop and think, you will discover, or maybe rediscover, a huge potential that you have inside you that may go get you into any direction you want. But just practice it. I feel that many people say about it, discuss, they know what it is, but very few practice it. It's not easy. And maybe I want to join this SIG, to tell you the truth. I don't know if you accept people from other countries, but I would be very, very interested. Okay, so focus on today and mindfulness is the second why. And moving into the third reason, I need to tell you another personal story, because to tell you the truth, that was my self-reflection. All these theories, I tried always to connect them with the things that were happening to me. And I need to stand in front of you and tell you that I'm very proud of my parents. Very proud of my parents because they're still alive. They have helped me a lot. I owe them many, many things. But as they were bringing me up, they had, let's say, a certain dogma or indoctrination that I think it has penetrated my skin, and I can still feel it. They would always used to say to me, George, since I was very young, you need to study hard. Why? Because if you study hard, you are going to enter the university. If you enter the university, then, and you graduate, you need to find a good job. After you find a good job, you need to make a lot of money. After you make a lot of money, you need to find a nice wife and have a family. And after you complete all this, then you will eventually be able to be happy. So for my parents, and maybe for your parents that belong to a different generation, you had to go through all these circles so to experience happiness. Possibly for them, it was just sitting on the sofa, feeling all this idea of accomplishment, and feel happy for yourself. And by the way, I did achieve all this. I'm not saying that I'm not happy. I love my family. I'm very happy about who I am and what I do. But I'm not sure that all this is prescriptive. I'm not sure whether this is just a recipe that, it simply worked for me or may work for somebody else. And then 2 new people came into my life. And I'm talking about my daughters. My daughters are 20 years old. They are twins. And as I found out from a discussion I had with Portuguese friends here, in Greece, one of the most important exams in your life are the university entrance exams. They're very stressful because practically you need to take 4 subjects to take the exam that will define the rest of your life. The faculty that you're going to enter, if you enter, a lot of competition, a lot of stress. So I could see my daughters in all this process that they were happy, they were going out with friends, different boyfriends were coming, at the house. They were very good in their studies, but, as a father, I was becoming a little bit worried. So at a certain moment, I simply asked this standard question, is everything okay? Maybe you need to study a little bit more. And then both of them, they actually made this talk to the hand thing and said, Dad, please, We know very well what we are doing. If you want us to succeed, we need to have a good time. We need to be happy. Which means at that particular level, I realized that maybe the positive aspect of this is flipping my father's dogma, which was saying hard work and then happiness and success, but now the new generation and positive psychology says, no, first you are happy and then you are successful. Because if you are not happy in what you are doing, this definitely will affect your performance. It's exactly as we saw with the students. Achieving success and values won't make you necessarily happy, but you need to have happiness and values so to achieve success. And this leads me to something that many trainers, even me, talks a lot about. I just want to make a reference. Values cannot be prescriptive. Values cannot be like, you have to do this or you need to be this. Values in the perspective of positive psychology is a self-discovery technique, is something that you find, and it's very much connected to mindfulness. It's what you are in your lives now. It's your compass that you need to help your students discover and find their own way. It's what we are in our lives now, not what we would like to become. This is a dream, which is fine, but it's just a dream, not what we think we should be. That is why I would highly recommend, this is something that I really love again, because I was a practitioner of this idea. And those of you who love ELT theories, and if we are to connect it with our science as well, you know, I must have delivered something like 100 talks about Bloom's taxonomy. When it came out, I was very enthusiastic. I was an ardent supporter. So I was talking a lot about critical thinking. And then some trainers actually came and gave this punch in the stomach, and they said, guys, okay, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. This stands, it works. But how can a kid who is lacking safety, basic physiological needs, who lacks love and belonging, how can he or she possibly practice critical thinking? This theory came out in 2007. This came out in 1956. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think every time we talk about theories and implementations and stuff, we need always to think, have our students fulfill the basic psychological needs, human needs, in order to be able to follow what we do. Because there might be a problem, not even in the classroom, that hinders them from doing so. So just to have it at the back of our mind, maybe Maslow before Bloom. That's my suggestion for today. So as positive educators, you should either show the students all the paths of different values, deliver the options on the table and let them choose, justifying their opinion, or help them students find their own values. They might be even at the stage where they have never thought about themselves. So a positive educator can actually instigate that in a way. I'm sure you know Carol Dweck. If you haven't read this book, I suggest that you go and buy it like today, the Growth Mindset book. I think every parent or educator should read this, and she has a complete chapter on how stories can inspire this in your classes. So any kind of text that you may have that has an inspirational story, this can be a really good beginning for discussion and awakening a little bit. Do never underestimate it. She has managed to move thousands of students simply by narrating stories of Michael Jordan, that you know that before he became #1 NBA player, he has been rejected by the majority of his coaches. So, and that story really worked people to do more. And of course, yes, we were talking about integration. Simply throwing a statement about values can be a really nice way to discuss, but always accept answers that are justified. So it's not simply a prescription, as I said before. It's about stimulating discussion, and be prepared that this can yield so much powerful impact and input from your students as well. So number 3, I would say, is values. And if you're still not convinced about how academic performance, your students' performance, can be influenced by being positive or negative, this is just a tiny fraction of the papers that prove exactly the same thing. Happier students are better students. And I wouldn't actually like anymore. This actually covers me. A lot of research on that and a lot of proof that it actually works. And attempting to read some people's mind again, because I have many friends that every time I get this a little bit sarcastic comment, okay, George, we know you are always positive, you are always laughing, you are always making jokes, but I want to be pessimistic. I don't want to be positive, I'm pessimistic. And what's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with that if you want to be pessimistic. But just keep at the back of your mind that it cannot be all pessimistic. That by nature, people have option. Martin Seligman, this is an amazing book, The Hope Circuit. We have so many choices. The way we think matters, which gives me the first suspicion that this is all about controlling your thoughts. Yes, you have the right to accept them and feel pessimistic and gloomy and negative, yes, but you do have the other option as well. Viktor Frankl, he survived the Holocaust. He's one of the biggest philosophers and psychologists of our times. And during these hard times, he clearly says, between stimulus and response, there is space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. He talks about the human power. He doesn't talk about any kind of external resources. And for me, the most important research, for those of you who are still pessimistic, is by this lady, Sonia Lyubomirsky, if I'm pronouncing this correctly. And she tried to prove a lot that maybe positivity or negativity is also, she actually tried to demonstrate how much of this is genetical. And she came up with this amazing, amazing research. 50% of your positive or negative emotions belongs to genetics. So yes, you may have a predisposition toward negativity or positivity. Fine by that. But 10% has to do with the circumstances, what is happening to you, because some of you may be going through some really tough, rough period that may influence your mood and how you deal with things. But 40% of whether we are positive or negative, science says it's intentional activity. And this 40% is incredibly high. You can control it. That's why I told you that it's a trained skill, and all we have to do is simply learn how to do it. More Justin Robinson, because this man has a PhD, has 2 masters, he has reached the top, let's say, of academic excellency. So he talks about positive education is not about being happy all the time, not avoiding negative emotion, not securing a child away from failure. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, so it has to be personal and human. And it's not another program to introduce. There are no magic wands here. We need to try. We need to attempt as many things as possible so to see this practicing. But this is another phrase of him stuck on my mind. We refer to ourselves as passionate, not as experts. And he has reached the utmost level of expertise, as I said before. It's a proactive approach, which means that you need to implement it actively. It's a whole school approach. In the perfect positive education settings, everyone has been trained, from the janitor up to the school principal, to treat the students in a more positive way. So it can work much better in this context. It's an evidence-based approach, which means that we're still trying to find out about it, and it's a strength-based approach. And this leads me to another point of reference that I would highly recommend that you all have a look at. This is one of the frameworks that I use in my interventions because I think it's very broad and it can cover a lot of needs. It are the character strengths by Peterson and Seligman. They spent 3 years. They delved into philosophy, psychology, religion, and they isolated the 6 most important virtues of humanity and the character strengths that support them. Again, this is not prescriptive. It's all about these strengths leading to this virtue, and so on, so forth. So you need to practice, but it's a very good framework for you. Anything that you may practice in your classes referring to these specific items, you are within the circle of positive education. And if you want to be more proactive about it, this is the site that you can go, the viacharacter.org. There is a very scientific test there by Ryan Namek. He's Seligman's student. Within 18 minutes, you can find your own most dominant character strengths. And you get a full report of how many of the rest of the strengths you can develop, or maybe you want to develop or not. It's 100% accurate, and it's being updated almost on a daily basis. And after you do the test, self-reflection, self-intervention, take action, then you can discuss it with your students. This is just a suggestive activity that can go through all year long, where you practically have the students take the test and then you discuss the results. And I must tell you, what we are doing now, the fact that you were interested to come to a talk about positive education, listen, and maybe start talking about this with your classmates, it's still positive. It's something that generates more positive feelings, and you're getting into the actual saga of it. Yeah, I do have time, okay. This is my favorite. Can you recognize the man on the picture? Who is he? Okay, I have a more difficult question for you. Can you recognize where exactly this photo was taken? Which ones? I want specific. No. Thank you. Was that like a guess, or did you actually know? Yeah? A guess. Okay. Indeed, that photo was taken from the Golden Medal Award ceremony in China at the 2008 Olympics. In that particular Olympic Games, Michael Phelps won 6 golden medals and broke the world record twice. The photo is from the ceremony of the 200 meters butterfly style. Very few people know or remember that in that particular race, something amazing happened, something incredible. Once Michael dived into the pool, his goggles filled up with water. He couldn't see one single thing, which means that he broke the world record and he won the golden medal completely blind. He couldn't see one single thing. And obviously, during the press conference, the first question that came from the journalist, because the coaches, people who follow swimming and they noticed. So the first question was, Michael, how on earth did you make it? And very calm, very easygoing, he said, but it was very easy. I had a plan B. Which means that Michael Phelps had predicted before the race what he would do in case the goggles fill up with water. He knew what to do. That was not my story. That was actually stolen from that particular book, Rethinking Positive Thinking by Gabriel Otsigen, which is, again, a very scientific research that I highly recommend. And it gets us the idea of mental contrasting. Mental contrasting is something that it can help us train ourselves against adversity, against negativity, feeling more positive. What this is all about? Very simple. You have a dream. You want to win the medal, you want to win the medal, you want to become rich, you want to be successful, fine. But when you have the dream, you also need to visualize the obstacle. And not only that, you need to think about a plan so to overcome this obstacle, and then, yes, you can have your wish because you feel robust and secure that you know what to do when adversity comes. 90% of the people, and I'm telling you the sample was very, very extensive, of the people who had a problem and thought about it, they provided a solution to their own problem themselves. So it's a very, very compelling data, and I don't think it has to be overestimated. It gives us an idea how many things we can do with ourselves. Another question for you. You were sat during an armed robbery.
You were injured, but you survived. You narrate the incident to a friend. Do you feel lucky or unlucky? You feel lucky. Okay, who feels lucky? Those who haven't raised their hands, does it mean that you feel unlucky? It doesn't matter, okay? There is no right or wrong, okay? Anybody who feels unlucky? No, okay, maybe you are shy to say it. Anyway, the fact is that the fact does not change. The robbery remains the same. But when you narrate the incident to your friend, it tells me a lot about your perception of positivity and negativity, because you have all experienced theoretically the same event, the armed robbery. But if you narrate it in a positive tone, this means that you have a positive perspective. Some people may feel unlucky, even exactly the same things happened. And this is really funny because it's very much connected to this study. In the States, they chose 10 overweight hotel maids that they were trying to lose weight, and they couldn't make it. So when they actually told them that what these ladies do every single day, it actually exceeded the Surgeon General's guidelines for fitness, because when you are a hotel maid, you lift up the mattresses, you climb stairs, you're sweeping the floor, you're doing a lot of activity every day. So when they told me, look, have you realized how many calories you lose every single day by doing these things? All of them started losing weight because, I don't know if it was a placebo, but maybe it changed their perspective. And there is another man from my country that leads us towards this idea. There is no objective truth because a man is the measure of all things. Focusing on the power you have to change your perspective and opinion. In Matrix 1, Keanu Reeves knows very well what Matrix is all about, yet he decides to stay. In 1984, Policeman O'Brien is torturing Mr. Smith to accept that 1 + 1 = 3. And Mr. Smith knows that if he says yes, it would be like betraying his own measure. It would be like betraying his own truth. And as Immanuel Kant said, can you actually, no matter what you believe or what you think, risk the possibility that what you want and what is true are two different things? Do you dare to challenge the truth of your own perspective? And this comes from another professor of mine who said very clearly, obviously he's not the first person who said that, but I think that's a very straightforward phrase. Our beliefs are forming our expectations, which gives me another positive impact of how powerful we are about what we're thinking. And that was just a very tiny, short, integrated workshop on perspective, and make you realize that what you think and what we live are two different things. And there is nothing wrong with that. All we have to find the power to train ourselves to go either this or the other way. I'm not the first person who tells you that critical thinking activities can be helpful, no matter what material you use, but I'm going to give you something extra. Every time you go down this lane of practicing a critical thinking activity, there is one single recipe which is infallible. Always ask for justification. Accept every single opinion, but always why. This is the first thing I learned in the academy, and that's what all my professors used to say. Always look for the other opinion. Never think that you are the only person that has actually thought something original. I don't think that there is originality anymore, but you can have a lot of original thought on trying to pursue it. And this is what we need to practice with our students. These are some suggested perspective activities from the Geelong Grammar School study group as well, just to instill a little bit this kind of curiosity. And there are two basic models. There are many more. These are positive psychology models that have been implemented into positive education. I talked to you about this. Hopefully in a future conference we can make a workshop around it. But there is also the PERMA model, that has to do with positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. There are even kindergarten programs that are based on that. I find it a little bit broad, but it's purely scientific. And Mr. Seligman is planning to, I'm going to give you some extra information, is planning to put V here for vitality, believing a lot in energy and zest being fundamental for having a positive emotion. You can find out more about them on the internet. You can make your own research. There are a lot of applications and activities as well on that. And being this the last slide, I just want you to keep at the back of your mind, remember, it's not taught, it's caught. Thank you. Ah, you want the end of the story? Ah, okay. We have 3 minutes. Okay, all right. Thank you for reminding me. So Gandhi looks at the woman, looks at the sun, and says to the sun, "Lady, 3 weeks ago, I also used to eat sugar." Meaning that as the right teacher, he had to experience this feeling himself before he provided a single advice. And my advice to you is, as I said before, this is not a theoretical sport. Positive education is something that we need to apply in practice. And I dare say that I saw many talks that they do have this positivity context background, because everything that you practice, no matter if it's a drama activity or any other activity, and procures these feelings, I consider it positive education. It's not something outside from this context. And if you try to analyze it and connect it with many more character strengths, you will see that this is how it works. But in other words, my friends, teachers, practice what you preach, because the students may never tell you, but this is exactly what they expect. Thank you again.